All right, welcome listeners to MCC Campus Connections, a podcast dedicated to getting to know one another. We are recording from downtown Chicago, and you may find us on Spotify, YouTube, and your favorite streaming sites. You can also contact us at podcast@mcccollege.edu. We have a wonderful guest today. We have Ben Lobpries, ESL director here at MCC. So welcome, Ben. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Gio.
Looking forward to our conversation.
Me too.
I know we've done a lot of work, obviously, with the new certification for the program. How was that?
The accreditation process was pretty grueling. It was definitely a full year from the initial self-study all the way through to getting the accreditation. But we got the full 10 years. So now we can breathe a little easier and just do a little follow-up reporting.
Absolutely. And congratulations is in order for you as you've, now that we've completed that process, have been promoted to ESL program director.
Yes.
And we obviously need to thank Pat Feeney for all her wonderful work.
Absolutely. Pat did the bulk of the accreditation. I think I did maybe, 20-30%, but she did a lot for that.
Yeah, Pat has taken a different role with us now, so we want to thank her for that role. What role is she taking?
She's adjunct. She stepped down. She's teaching 2 days a week for us, and she's still around to help me during the transition process as I continue with follow-up reporting with accreditation and just getting my bearings as program director.
Now, tell us a little bit about the ESL program, because it's quite a large and successful program.
It is, but when we started, I think we had somewhere between 30 to 50 students. So Pat and I both joined MCC in 2017. At that time, the program was unaccredited and was mostly just sort of loosely connected classes that were supporting the medtech side of the school. And Olga wanted to get it accredited, so she brought Pat in, and it was a very quick process. I think 6 months from the time Pat got hired to the time the site visit happened. And from there, we've grown from 35 students up to around 350. We definitely took a little dip during the pandemic.
Of course, like everyone.
Like everybody. But yeah, we have now this term, we've got 20 faculty members and about 350 students, more or less.
Yeah, we had to open an extension at the Wacker, location, which was wonderful.
Sure fun for you.
Wonderful for me, but I'm sure the students are enjoying, what it looks like now, because definitely we needed more space.
Yeah, and even with that extension, we still month
we need more
more
space.
Yeah, and it's a good problem to have.
Absolutely, and I know some students come over to the LaSalle campus on the weekends, so I'm sure they like to see a different campus as well.
Yeah, but I think the 100 South, both campuses have their views, but the river view at 100 South seems to be a pretty popular spot for students to hang out.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Are you from Chicago?
I'm not from Chicago.
Where are you from?
I'm from Archer City, Texas.
Texas.
Woo! It's a tiny little town of about 2,000 people in the middle of nowhere. We had to drive 25 miles to get groceries or go to the movie theater.
Wow.
It's kind of a famous town. Larry McMurtry, who was passed away this past year, was a Pulitzer Prize-winning author of Lonesome Dove, co-wrote Brokeback Mountain, and The Last Picture Show, which was filmed there. And it's a book, a novel, and then a movie about a very depressing small town that the town didn't take too kindly to because it was pretty thinly veiled. But yeah, it's an oil town, cowboy town, rodeo town.
Did you picture yourself being in the big city coming from a small town?
I did and I didn't. Once I started doing theater, that was my undergrad. Got a BFA in theater. Once I started doing theater, I knew I was going to need to be in cities just for the art scene and the culture scene.
Mm-hmm.
But I also grew up with a backyard that stretched out for 18 miles. And, I was
gorgeous.
My parents would, wake up in the middle of the night and find that I'd just gone on a walkabout at 2 a.m. So the country kid in me still likes to commune with nature and get out of the city. So my city life involves getting out of the city at least once a month to go hiking or camping.
What school did you go to? What college did you go to?
I went to Southern Methodist University for undergrad
Mm-hmm.
for my theater degree. And then very shortly after that, some friends of mine started a theater company here in Chicago. And I found there's kind of a migratory pattern between Texas and Chicago.
Really?
I've met a lot of people in Chicago who are from here who want to move to Texas, and then a lot of people from Texas. I think there's something similar in the Midwest DNA and the Southern DNA of there's still a friendliness that's not quite, full on laid back California or
True.
colder New England. So it was a comfortable enough spot. I mean, I came to visit Chicago right out of undergrad and immediately just knew it was my city. I felt the rhythm of it. I fell in love with it immediately. And my friend started a theater company called the House Theater of Chicago. We did a show that got huge reviews and we just blew up at the age. We were all like 22, 23, and all of a sudden had this hit on our hands. So I did that. I did theater, playwright mostly. I did some acting in my early 20s, but mostly focused on writing, which led me to get my MFA in creative writing in Boston at Emerson College.
So you went from the South to the Midwest to the East Coast, and then back obviously to the Midwest. How was Boston?
I love Boston. I'm glad I got to spend some time there. It's definitely got, I have a soft spot in my heart for it. But again, whenever I was in Boston, I felt like coming from a small town, I always thought I was a really nice person. And then after a couple years in Boston, I realized, I think I'm only as nice as my environment requires me to be.
That's
because
quite a shocker.
Yeah, because in Boston, I mean, it's just a different culture. And especially that city in particular, I think there are so many people passing through either for school or just young professionals getting started that it didn't feel like Chicago. I feel like in Chicago, people move to Chicago to like plant some roots and live in Chicago. And in Boston, it felt like a lot of us were just passing through. So I loved Boston. I have a lot of love for Boston, but I was definitely, after 5 years there, even just coming to visit Chicago, I could feel the difference that there's just the Midwest is kind of the right balance for me because the South is a little too friendly and the East Coast was a little too frigid. And so I find the Midwest vibe to be just my speed.
And you got a master's degree, correct? At Boston?
An MFA, Master in Fine Arts and Creative Writing. And that's when I started my teaching career. As a grad student, I started teaching college writing classes at Emerson College. And then I was visiting assistant professor of English at Wheaton College in Massachusetts, not the same as the Illinois Wheaton. And then I moved back to Chicago in 2014 and worked at DePaul as an adjunct in their first year writing program. And then just started ESL in 2015, sort of as the side gig, as the side hustle, supplemental income. And slowly, year after year, felt myself being pulled more towards ESL and the international students and the diverse classrooms. And so when the opportunity came up in 2017 to come to MCC and then in 2018 to become lead instructor, I stepped away from DePaul and took my job as lead instructor for the ESL.
What was your bachelor's in?
Bachelor's was theater. So I've got my BFA in theater,
right.
MFA in creative writing. When I went to get my master's, my mom said, and my mom is very supportive of the arts, but she said, so you're going to get another arts degree? Yeah. What you going to do with that one? Yeah. And I said, well, I think I'm going to become a teacher, Mom. And as soon as I started teaching, I realized I'd waited too long. I should have started teaching earlier because I really like it. It was a very natural fit for me.
Yeah, I've mentioned before that I have a bachelor's degree in education, and that's something that I thought I wanted to do. And I do like the coaching aspect of it because I have a physical education degree. And I did go into it within Chicago Public Schools, but CPS is a different animal.
It's tough.
It's very different from suburban. So it's just the administration is usually what I think most beginner teachers have issues with.
Well, especially K through 12 is a totally different beast from college. And I always knew that I'm good with kids. I was a camp counselor in college, but I knew that I wasn't interested in teaching kids for a
Yeah.
living. I prefer to teach adults. I like being able to look at everyone in the room and say, we all chose to be here, right?
Oh.
We're all choosing to be here.
Well, it's a little
No
bit
one's
easier,
forcing you
yes.
to be here. Yeah.
So you got your bachelor's in theater.
Mm-hmm.
You moved to Chicago with your friends. You started a theater company, correct? How was that? How'd that go?
I mean, it was a wild ride. I come and go with theater, which was the nice thing about the theater company was we kind of had a revolving door policy.
Mhm.
Like the artistic director encouraged us, go away, have new experiences, and then bring back what you learned. And that was definitely how it worked for me. When I first moved here in 2002, I was doing a lot of acting, and then I shifted to playwriting, all the while, of course, waiting tables, working retail, working reception, always had a day job. And around 25 is when a lot of my friends, I feel like everyone had the same New Year's resolution one year, which was no more day jobs. We're only going to make money as artists.
Mm-hmm.
And I started down that path because that's just what you do. There's also some of that ego involved that if you're not making your living doing it, then it's just a hobby. You're not really a writer. You're not really an artist if you're not making your living doing it. And so I kind of, fell into that for a little bit and then very quickly realized that that wasn't my path.
Mm-hmm.
Having to make a living doing it tainted the whole process for me. Knowing that I needed this show to be a hit in order to pay the bills just changed the creative impulse in a way that I made a different decision. I decided I wanted to find a day job that I could truly enjoy, that would be satisfying, and then my art could be whatever it needed to be, whatever I wanted it to be. And if other people liked it, great. If I wrote something that was successful, great. And if not, I would still write because I'm not a writer because I make money doing it. I'm a writer because that's how my brain works. That's how I process the world and my place in it.
So you were writing for your company, plays for your company, or sketches, or
yeah, they were shows, full length shows. I had a 1-act and then 2-3 full length shows through my company over the years. And then in grad school, I started revisiting fiction and some nonfiction as well. And I have my novel that's 3 chapters away from being finished.
Oh, wonderful!
And
you have a name for it yet?
Time. Oh yes, it's called Down Waco Way.
Down Waco Way.
Mm-hmm.
Reference to Texas Waco.
It is a Texas story about a big crazy Texas family. It started as a collection of linked stories, and then slowly grew into a full novel. And I love it. I did. I think possibly I'm struggling finishing it because when I first started it in 2010. I was in a real sentimental, nostalgic place for Texas and my small town in Texas. Yeah. And then, over the last 8 years, the climate has changed. Things have gotten a little more heated down there. And I have some strong feelings about my home state and some of the things happening down there that have made maybe the novel is actually going to turn out better now because some of that sentimentality I've scraped away at it.
It's gone now.
Yeah, and so as it's interesting because as the novel progresses, the sort of hazy nostalgia starts to fade as it gets into more realistic, slightly grittier present day stories. So I think it might actually work to its advantage.
Are you working with a publisher or are you not at that stage yet?
I'm not at that stage yet. I'm really bad about sending out my work. I have, files and files and files of things that I've completed that, I never send out. That's always been my weaknesses. As an artist, I don't like the business end of having to hustle and network and, send my work out, which is why it was nice to be part of a theater company where I already had an artistic home and could just, if I wanted to workshop something I was writing, I could schedule a workshop. How'd
the company turn out?
The company had a 21-year run that was, for the most part, very successful. That took the same kind of hits that most people did in 2008 when the economy turned. We had to, do some revamping and downsizing, and then we were in a growth phase. And then the pandemic hit, and we made it through the first year on the funding, on the COVID funding, and then last summer summer of 2022, we shuttered after 21 years.
Well, that's sad.
It is sad. It's unfortunately not uncommon. It's kind of the pandemic story, especially for live theater. Pandemic was really difficult when, 2021, when everyone was trying to reopen, but then one person tests positive and the whole show shuts down again.
Yeah.
And the company eats that money because the run got cut short. It was a rough game to try to win.
Good memories though, fond memories.
Absolutely. I mean, for the most part, it was certainly the core group was friends from college, and so after 20 years, that had its pros and cons too.
Yeah, sure.
We definitely there were times where it was like a family, and like family, that has its its baggage and
right.
But we also, if nothing else, it was a safe place to experiment and create and take risks, which I think is really important.
Once you guys closed, did people just stay here, or did they go out to LA, New York, to pursue any other opportunities?
There's a lot of shuffling. I mean, the pandemic shuffle, I think, happened in all fields. I know quite a few people who chose to go to grad school in that moment, which is similar to what I did in 2008 when the economy was kind of in the crapper, and I was like, oh, well, this seems like a good time to go back to school. And I think some people have made that decision. And some people are in LA. New York is kind of the young person's game. I found a lot of my friends who moved there right after college did it for a couple years. And then I was like, okay, I'm tired of working all the time to just barely make rent. It feels like a young person's game if you don't have the funds to live it up.
A few years ago, I was finishing up my master's degree. Was doing an internship out in Colorado Springs. Obviously, all the class of my interns became friends. Went down to Georgia, first time being to Georgia, Athens, Georgia, University of Georgia. That was culture shock.
Yeah.
I've always grown up a big city kid. Even though I grew up outside of the U.S. in a different country, it was still a city. But going down to Georgia, Athens, Georgia, it was a little bit of a shock.
What shocked you about it? What were the big differences?
I flew into Atlanta. Atlanta is huge, first of all, but I found it to be huge and empty, which is a little odd. It felt like, I don't know. I think it was a Friday night because I think the game was Saturday, and maybe I was in the wrong side of Atlanta, but I just remember it being a big empty town, and I'm like, this is so odd. It's so huge, and there's like nobody around.
Well, there's so much more space in the South.
Yeah.
Everything is so much more spread out.
Yes.
I forget how much personal space I have given over to public life in the city.
Yeah, and then once I got down to Athens, Georgia, I mean, obviously we were in Athens in the football town. And I just had not experienced any Southern culture, let alone... even though I went to Division I school, athletic school, Ball State University, University of Georgia, which is an SEC, Southern Eastern Conference university, it's as big as it gets in athletics. So that whole culture of how people are into it, but more so the societal culture, the norms there. That was a little, maybe it was like some of the things that I read in books. When it was in front of me, it was just like, oh my God, this is so true.
You mean like football culture or the...
No, life culture, society culture. Yeah, how they behave, how they speak, how they interact. Way different from what I had experienced in the past. That was a little bit culture shock.
What's your home city?
Chicago. I was born here.
Oh.
Yeah. You went to SMU, which has a rich history in football.
It does.
And I think you have a friend, right? Or had a friend who...
Yeah, Thaddeus D. Matula. He created the documentary that got all the hype about the SMU football team getting the death penalty. in the 80s for illegal recruiting. And when I was there in the 90s, I feel like the death penalty was just starting to expire.
Okay.
I can't remember how long it lasted. It might have already technically expired, but
it has.
The program was still so like it had not really recovered from the hit that it took. Pony Excess, that was Thad's documentary.
Express? No.
Pony Express is what SMU, that's what they called our SMU currency.
Okay.
Pony Express. And so I think he named his documentary Pony Excess.
Oh, is that right?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, but he made a documentary and launched him into the next tier.
Yeah, anyone that studies or is around athletics is aware or should see it, because it's a really good case study in what big time athletics it really is in the United States. I've always said it's an entertainment business, and universities use it for their benefit. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
Well, that's why there's so much debate about paying college athletes.
Exactly.
Which is at the heart of why SMU got the death penalty.
Yeah, the whole story about SMU is very intriguing, because they made SMU an example of what everybody continues to do. It's anyway. Get off my soapbox on that.
But I played football.
Did you?
I did. I was in a small town. One of the things I miss about small town life is the expectation and need for everyone to participate in everything. In order, I remember when my sister was in school, the football players at halftime would come out and march in the marching band.
Is that right?
They wouldn't be in the
extra people
because that you couldn't have a marching band unless you had everyone. We only had I had 28 people in my graduating class. We had 500 people on campus, and that was K through 12 all on one campus. So if you're going to have any clubs, if you're going to have sports teams and bands, and then everyone has to participate in everything. It's very different from the big schools where it's competitive and you have to try out and audition to be in any of these things.
Yeah, everybody just participates.
Like, do it, do this, do this, do this. And it teaches you, it encourages you to be a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
Which I enjoy. I think I am someone who, I think of myself as a jack of all trades. I'd rather have a broad base of knowledge and be good at a lot of things than just be an expert at one thing. I'm not really
that's how I pretty much, I think, live my life. Jack of all trades, a little bit of everything. I've done everything from paper delivery boy to grocery bagger. That's how I started, at old Dominic stores. That's how long ago it's been. Those don't exist anymore. Dominic's is just like Jewel.
Yeah,
now,
I remember Dominic's. There were still a few when I moved here.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, now they're all defunct.
But, our culture doesn't really encourage that sort of.
No.
We're very much, you do one thing and you do it well.
And that's it. Yes,
and
you focus on that, and that's all you do.
Thing.
Yeah.
I find it pretty exhausting. I find it pretty tedious.
I do as well. I don't like it because I don't like the monotony of it. I like whatever interests me. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So
I'm the same way.
Yeah. So obviously growing up from a small town, coming to big city, how did you feel that change was?
The change from, so I did, I went to college in Dallas. So it
was a big city.
I had my big city experience in Dallas, but it's still a Texas city. It's still a southern city, or I guess you could think of it as a driving city. It's one of those cities, especially then, if you didn't have a car, good luck. Maybe there's a bus that comes somewhere within half an hour of you.
Yeah.
And now they've developed their DART rail. So there's a little more public transportation. But certainly when I was there, if you didn't have a car, you couldn't get anywhere. And even with the car, you're going to spend a lot of time on the interstate. So one of the things I was most excited about Chicago was getting to ditch my car and being in a city that it's not quite the walking city that Boston is known to be, but it's still a city you can get around in without a car. And also at that time I was 22 and had several accidents, so my car insurance was out of control. So I was happy to ditch my car and be in a city where I could just get around without it. I do love the culture. I did react in Dallas. I remember reacting to the loss of personal space. And I guess it's been so long, I forgot. I did kind of have a headache the first year I lived in Chicago. And I think part of that was just adjusting to having so many more people around me all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, I grew up walking in a field that stretched out for 18 miles.
Yeah.
So it definitely took some adjusting to give up that personal space. But in exchange for it, I had, all the culture, lots of job opportunities, lots of social opportunities, the things that we seek out in cities.
Yeah.
And I found also, coming from a very conservative town in the Bible Belt, I found the city life to be quite liberating.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And I like a little anonymity. I grew up in a town where everybody knows you.
Everybody knows who
Half of my senior class was my kindergarten class. So by the time we were in high school, everybody had already dated. We had to start going to the nearby towns to date because, everybody knew everybody's business. And I enjoyed coming to a place where it's like, oh, millions of people. I can just go about my life and nobody even notices me.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like you said, there's a lot of people that are in a big city that want to go to, outside country town, small town. I've always felt that. I mean, I was born here, but I grew up in a different country, Guatemala City, Central America. And even though it's still a big city, it's very different growing up in a different country.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, when I grew up a long time ago, it's way different from how my kids are growing up now. And I remember I moved down to Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. That's where I did my bachelor's degree. Small town, open fields, very different feel than, say, because I did start at UIC, and obviously UIC, middle of the city, University of Illinois, Chicago, middle of the city versus out in the countryside. It's a completely different field. Then I moved to Muncie, Indiana. That's a Ball State, another small town. Even though it's a college town, it's not, not Indianapolis, even though we're close to Indianapolis.
Right. Did you take to the space that
I liked it? Yeah, I definitely liked the space, the slower pace. More so when I moved to Colorado Springs in Colorado.
Sure.
Which is like very chill, very like Zen-like. That is really what I liked. That scene, obviously the mountains. I'm an outdoors person, so if you like, not where I go fishing all the time, but I like outdoor activities, hiking, biking, and I did all that when I was in Colorado Springs. It's probably, aside from being in when I was in the Army, being in Colorado Springs is probably the best shape I've ever been in my life because I was doing a lot of running out in the mountains, a lot of mountain biking, and I was plus a little bit higher altitude, so that it's a little bit different. So
do you get out into nature around here? Do you have any places around here?
No, aside from the forest preserves, no. I do. I've been around a little bit to the parks, but not a whole lot. I haven't gotten there. My kids aren't that old enough to start doing that, but they will be. So I'm gonna start going out to state parks. State parks to do that.
The Cook County Forest Preserves are a great daytime
way to get started, right?
And the Indiana Dunes, that's a go-to. My husband's an Eagle Scout, so whenever I moved back here, he introduced me to all of the nature that I did not know about the first time I lived here. When I was here first, in my 20s, I got a little claustrophobic and a little landlocked because I didn't have a car and I didn't know about that stuff. But now we started at the Indiana Dunes. We'll go up to Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois Beach State Park. It's just an hour.
Yeah, it's not that far away.
That far away. And then Shawnee down at the Kentucky border is beautiful. I've been down there a couple times.
Yeah, there's a lot of state parks that people are not aware of that are not that far away, and they're very beautiful, and kind of gives you a different feel from being in the city.
For sure.
So
it's like I said, it's a big part of my balance of being able to be in the city is being able to get out of it.
Yeah, of course we go down to Milwaukee or Lake Geneva, which is very beautiful. Nobody's been down there. Even the what's over here by the Iowa border. Anyway, it's another small town. I always forget the name of it. So anyway, yeah, without a doubt, there's a lot of outdoor things to do in Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan area
for the 4 to 6 months that you can
do it.
So that's the kicker.
But you can do a lot of winter stuff too. Michigan, you can do a lot of stuff.
Sure. It's a different game. We did just get a hot tent, the kind that has a wood burning stove inside of it.
Okay.
So that we can up our winter camping game. We've had a couple of successful.
At least 3 seasons. I don't know if I want to be in the snow.
We've done some January 14 degrees camping trips with the hot tent.
Yeah, I don't know. I think from my military days, I kind of threw me off a bit. Yeah, those military days out with no heat.
Yeah.
You had to put up with it. So I was kind of, I've had enough of that.
Sure.
So what does the future hold now that obviously you want to finish your novel? You just started a new position here at MCC as a director. What does the future hold?
Well, I think we're definitely developing some plans for growing the ESL program. Those things are all in the works and in the early phases, but I think that could keep me pretty busy for this next year. Obviously, I want to finish my novel. I have 2 plays that I finished that I should be sending out for production. One is ready for a production workshop. The other needs some more table workshopping. So, at some point, usually I'll do that kind of stuff in bursts, like over Christmas break. I'll send my stuff out to a bunch of different places, and then when the school term starts back up again, I'll forget about it. So I look to do that. I'm also, with the migrant crisis being what it is, I've started some volunteer work with some of the refugee support organizations in town. Specifically, I did a volunteer day with Chicago Refugee Coalition. It was called Day of Dignity, and I'm signing up on their volunteer list. So I'm looking to also get more involved in some of the nonprofit organizations that are supporting the refugees that are continuing to.
What type of volunteer work is available with working with the refugees?
Well, there's a lot right now. Obviously, my experience makes me most qualified for ESL teaching. To actually help them with language acquisition and cultural, orientation. But there's so much. There's everything from working the food banks and the clothing drives. Winter's coming on, so that's a big thing. The housing, obviously, that's a controversial topic as neighborhoods are converting old schools, and the debate of the resources going to newly arrived immigrants, but what about the people who have been here for
versus residents,
5 to 20 years? So there's a lot of that is tense, but there's also a lot of need just for boots on the ground. And I'm a pretty organized person, so the volunteer event I've done so far already, I was like, oh yes, I can organize the winter coats.
Which organizations would you say are out there for people to look into and potentially volunteer?
I feel like every time I look, there's a new one that's cropped up.
Yeah.
I mean, even Chicago Refugee Coalition is fairly new, and as the buses continue to arrive, I think more and more organizations are cropping up, and some of them are tutoring, mentoring, housing. The event that I did was with Chicago Refugee Coalition was a resource fair. So it brought together a lot of organizations, and there were booths for everything from, attorneys and dental exams, doctor exams, school supplies, just that kind of stuff, helping them get settled and integrated.
Yeah. Wonderful.
And I'm working on my Spanish. I'm the eternal Spanish student.
Really?
Yeah. I've taken so many years of Spanish, and but specifically, since I am interested in these volunteer opportunities, I need to get better with my Spanish. So I'm recommitted to Spanish again. I think it's time. I've done a lot of academic Spanish, a lot of classroom Spanish. So I think it's probably time to start doing some conversational.
You at a speaking level, or where are you at?
Aprendo. Leo y escribo bien, pero no hablo bien.
So you can write.
I can read and write fairly well.
You can't speak it?
I'm a visual learner. And that's true in English, too. I'm not really an auditory learner. Orientations at new jobs always kind of stress me out because they're mostly...
visual.
Well, no, they're mostly oral. It's like, so over here is this thing, and we're going to do this, and then you're going to over here. And I'd like
visual.
to see it in writing.
I want to see what's... I think I am the same way. I like to learn visually.
And I forget that even as a teacher, sometimes I have to remind myself to provide more visual reinforcements because I'm talking too much.
Yeah, that's something that I learned from obviously being a teacher, that we all have our individual learning preferences. And then we tend to as a teacher, you tend to then impose that on your students, where you have to actually understand that everybody has a different learning style, and you should teach to every learning style.
Yep.
And I've spoke about this, I think, on the first episode, how teaching is a calling. I have several family members who are teachers, and I know how difficult it is, and I know that not everyone should be teaching. God bless those people that want to try, but honestly, not everybody can be a teacher. It's really difficult to do.
Well, and that's one of the things with higher ed is being a genius and an expert in your field doesn't mean you're going to be a good teacher.
Exactly.
And I think we've all had at least one teacher in our lives who's like, oh, yes, you are very smart. You do not know how to connect with me.
Yes, it's the same thing I had this conversation with Dr. Rusto when I did an episode with Dr. Rusto about management is the same way. Just because you sell, hey, congratulations, that doesn't mean you can't lead a team to help everyone excel. And there are differences and different things you need to know and understand in order to lead and motivate. You can't just always crack the whip.
Yeah.
But anyway.
For sure.
So Ben, as we wrap up, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come here today. I know, we're at LaSalle, we're not at Wacker. I do want to come down to Wacker and record episodes at our Wacker location, but we're so busy over there, kind of difficult to find time.
No, thanks for, I like any excuse to come over to 203. I don't get over here very often.
Yeah. So I want to remind our listeners that you can reach us at podcast@mcccollege.edu. I'd like to thank Ben Lobpries. Hope I said that correctly.
Yeah, you got it.
For coming out today. And we had a great conversation. Thank you. I enjoyed it. Hopefully our listeners enjoyed it as well.
Absolutely.
And we look forward to speaking to you on our next episode. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Gia.